Let's talk about how to pass the HSBC HireVue interview for 2024. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English. If you don't already know me, I am a career coach. I've been doing this since 2013 and I make these videos to break down the interview processes for world famous companies to help you get a job. Today we're going to be talking about the British banking giant HSBC and how you can pass their first round HireVue interview. We're going to go through 5 fast facts for the company taken from their 2023 annual report, which you can use to put into your answer about why you want to work for HSBC. We're going to talk about the interview format for the company, and then we're going to run through some common and very common questions that we came across based upon our research into the company's interview process from candidates who have gone through the process in the last 9 months. So here's 5 fast facts about HSBC. HSBC serves 42 million customers around the globe. The proportion of women in senior leadership positions in 2023 was 34%, with the aim to increase this to 35% by 2025. The banks processed a staggering $500 trillion worth of payments in 2023, which is almost $1.5 trillion a day. HSBC employs over 220,000 people across 62 countries globally. And finally, in 2023, HSBC donated $107 million to charitable causes. So let's talk about HSBC's first round interview process. And interestingly, their job simulation, which is done through HireVue, appeared not only for graduates and internships as well as apprenticeships, but also for some more senior positions. Now, generally, when somebody is interviewing for a position at a bank in terms of a professional hire, a manager, or a director and above, they tend to go through multiple rounds of interviews. But we saw a number of candidates who reported, much to their chagrin, that they also went through the HSBC job simulation. Now, job simulations are relatively new, but they have been around for about 4 to 5 years. They first started out in the professional services company through Deloitte and PwC and also EY, and have since kind of popped up in lots of different companies, mainly pushed through by HireVue. And what you can expect from job simulation is really a mixture of different types of questions. Now, these could be straight one-way video interview questions, which is basically you have a question which pops up on a screen and you are given a certain amount of time to respond to that question. In HSBC's case, it tends to be 2 minutes to answer and 2 minutes to prepare. You could also be given situational judgment test questions where you're given a hypothetical work-based situation which you then have to solve again by talking to the camera for around 2 minutes. You could be asked to write an email based upon information which is provided, or even to do a mini case study, something that we really first saw with PwC. Now, before I jump into the questions, I want to really just make something quite clear. When we make these videos in quite a general way for an absolutely enormous company. Generally, we're dealing with companies that employ at least 10, if not 20,000 people. And sometimes people will watch these videos fully expecting that the exact questions that we cover will appear in the video interview. Now, most of the time this is the case. However, it is always dependent upon your role. I do strongly recommend that you make sure you go through the job description. This is the most accurate way for you to get an indication about how to prepare for the interview that is in front of you. For example, if you're watching this and you're applying to do investment banking or sales and trading at HSBC, then you should very much prepare yourself for some form of technical questions, which you can prepare for probably using something from Wall Street Oasis or Mergers and Inquisitions. However, if you're applying for something like finance and risk, it seems much less likely that you will get technical questions. And I want to make this note because every so often, though it doesn't happen that frequently, somebody will say, well, I did the interview and I watched your video and I got different questions. Another thing to note is that the reason why we have an interview course is because the questions that come up are chosen from a random pool of questions. And the questions that we pick out are generally no more than 10, because otherwise the videos would be far too long. And they are very common, but it doesn't mean that they will feature all of the time. And of course, companies do this on purpose, because if they always ask the same questions all the time, then it will be very easy for candidates to prepare. So you should always try to make sure sure you use things, for example, what we talk about in our interview success secrets course, which is preparing star stories, preparing from commercial news, understanding basic technicals which relate to your role. These are all really important for a well-rounded preparation for your interview, rather than just watching this video and taking my word as gospel. Because of course, many people are watching this from all different countries around the world, and there will be some variation in terms of the way that HSBC's interview process is presented. Here are the 10 most common questions that we came across while doing our research from candidates who had successfully been through HSBC's interview process in the last 9 months. Question 1, what would you say is your biggest weakness? Now, generally, apart from tell me about yourself, answering the biggest weakness question is something that most people fear, because they don't want to give away something that they believe will mess up their chances of doing the job. Best advice when thinking about biggest weakness is really to think about a big lesson that you've learned in your professional or academic life. Perhaps there was a time when you weren't so organized. Maybe there was a time when you were often late to classes and you missed something that was really important. Maybe there was a time when you would leave things too late due to the fact that you were, maybe going out and partying a bit too much, and then you failed an exam or you missed handing in a paper. So a biggest weakness is really a biggest lesson. And the way to overcome answering this question is to talk about the lesson that you learn. For example, let's talk about the fact that maybe you didn't prepare properly for an exam and you failed. Now, for a lot of people, they'd say, well, I'm not going to mention that because that's going to make me look really bad. But it's more common than you would think, and everybody fails at something sometime. The most important thing is what you learned from that failure. So you had an exam at university, you failed that exam, and then you came away from that process and you thought, well, actually, the reason why I failed is because I didn't prepare enough. I didn't have an organized study schedule, and I didn't stay behind and speak to the TAs and also use the professor's open hours for class drop-ins so that I could really understand some of the more difficult points of the class. So then you put that into place for your next exam, and you demonstrate the fact that you have overcome this weakness because the next exam that you did really well. One thing that I would say about your biggest weakness question is make sure that it's something that is real and genuine for you. As very often whenever I listen to this answer in one-to-ones, I can tell when somebody is being disingenuous or false and really just trying to put it on because there's not enough material for them to come across as really believable. Question number 2, why do you think that you are suitable for this role? Now, as I spoke about before, it's really crucial that you make sure that you read and understand the job description for the role that you're applying for. This is really one of the most effective ways for you to predict the questions that you're going to be asked. Because of course, a company is going to ask you questions that are related to the role. This is also true if we're talking about situational judgment test questions. I'm not going to ask you about how to drill for oil if you're sitting during an exam for an operations graduate, right? So what you want to think about with this question is really splitting it up into 2 parts. First part of this question is just to understand and explain what you would do in this role. The second part is to pick out 2 or 3 key skills that are named within the job description and demonstrate using an example why you are a good fit for this role. One thing that you want to avoid is not excessively talking about yourself and why you're really good in an unstructured or chaotic way. Of course, you want to inject your own experience into this example, but you want to do it in relation to the job description. Thinking one step forward with this, you have to recognize that in a higher view interview, your answers are going to be transcribed and then passed looking for keywords that are relevant to the job description at hand. So it's really important that you know and understand this and have examples which are built around the skills that they are asking for. Question number 3, tell me about a recent trend that is affecting the banking industry and the bank. Now, very often when it comes to commercial awareness, I tend to find that there are 2 camps. There is either the camp of people who maybe they've been messing around in financial markets or had an interest since they were a teenager, and they're familiar with Bloomberg, CNBC, the Financial Times, The Economist, and so on and so forth. This is the minority. in which case you'll find it very easy to answer this question. The majority really don't know anything about the banking industry. Something that I highly recommend that you do is just once a week, check on an easy to read publication like BBC Business News, or maybe sign up for a monthly subscription for something like The Economist. This gives you some easy and bite-sized explanation for big trends which will be happening in the banking industry in a way that is easily understandable by you. Most importantly, when you're picking out an example for a piece of commercial news that you can use to answer this question, make sure it's more micro than macro. One thing that you don't want to be doing is taking the time to try to explain global inflation in 2 minutes or less. Pick an example which you are genuinely interested in, which you can adequately summarize and present to the camera. Question number 4, why do you want to work for HSBC? Now, at the start of this video, I gave you 5 fast facts for HSBC. What you want to make sure is you are giving facts which are specific to the company. You can use their annual report, and in fact, a trick that I've been using recently for our latest Past the Interview videos is simply to download the annual report for the company, pop it into ChatGPT, and ask it to give me 25 interesting facts that aren't all related to their financials. This way you really show that you've done your homework, and if you want to level up this question, then pick out one fact which means something to you and explain why it resonates. For example, one of the facts that I gave was about the number of women in senior leadership positions, and maybe this means something to you because you are a young female applying to work at HSBC. Question number 5, give me an example when you led a team. Now, a lot of the responses around the way that the interview process went mentioned that there were a lot of behavioral interview questions. Now, behavioral interview questions are basically trying to pick out key skills that are required for the role. So in this case, it's going to be teamwork. To answer this, you're going to want to use something which is called STAR, Situation, Task, Action, Result. Now, if you want to find a really simple way to hack this technique, you can check out our interview success secrets course. But the basics is that you want to be very clear when this happened, the situation, what exactly you were doing in short, the task. The majority of your answer is based around the action, I'd say at least 70%, and then the last 5% just to give a tangible result. So when you're talking about the skills for teamwork, which you're going to be mentioning in the action part, so it would be speaking to your teammates, listening to them, making sure you understand the matter at hand, that you're available for other people, that you're helpful. The list really goes on, and you can pick 4 or 5 things which demonstrate you have a clear understanding of teamwork. Question number 6, tell me about a time you had a conflict with somebody at work. Now, a conflict is basically a disagreement. It doesn't have to be a full-on stand-up row, but also it could be something as simple as you're in a group doing a project for university and you want to choose a different topic to your teammate. Now, something that's really important in terms of resolving conflict is, number 1, listening to the other person, understanding what the problem is, taking the time to speak to them, probably one-on-one rather than a group scenario, seeing if you can find some sort of compromise and moving forward so that you can basically get the work done. The most important thing is not about being right, the most important thing is about getting a result. So when you have a conflict with somebody, it's really seeing how you can smooth things over and maybe understand something deeper which is going on. Could be that person is having a difficulty in their home life, and most of the time, if I'm honest with you, conflicts tend to be just down to bad communication. Question number 7, tell me about a time when you overcame a difficult task working as a team. Now, for me, this is a question that I really enjoy because I think you really get to understand what exactly people define as difficult. A group task where you have quite a lot to do, or it's quite complicated, is a good example. Or it could just be something as simple as a really busy Saturday service at a restaurant and making sure that you all get everything tidy so that you can get away at a reasonable hour. The most important thing when breaking down a difficult task, which helps people to answer this really clearly, is thinking about teaching somebody else to overcome a difficult task rather than just saying what you did. Another thing as well is giving props to your teammates and not just to yourself, and going through it quite simply step by step by step, the exact things that you needed to do. For example, say you had 100 covers at a restaurant and you're 2 men down, so you've just got the chef, 2 wait staff and a maitre d', and then you've got to clean down everything and make sure it's all ready for the next day. You might talk about the exact process that you went through in terms of handing out the task, communicating, make sure that customers are happy, making sure that the chef is getting service, that you're communicating with your other waiter. Maybe you speak to your manager who's based at home on that day or is off sick, but really take us through the individual things that you needed to do in order to get a successful result. Question number 8, tell me about yourself. Now, if you haven't already figured out the script for Tell Me About Yourself, it's something that I highly recommend that you do. You can search Tell Me About Yourself in Job Ready English and find a breakdown of the video to go through this and write out your answer, or you can check out the free download down in the description below for application success secrets. A great personal introduction for me has 6 or 7 elements, depending upon how you think about it. What are you doing now? What have you done in the past? What would you like to do in the future? Probably don't need to do this when you're actually interviewing for a company, but it's a good thing for you to practice. Work experience, extracurricular skills and activities, hobbies and interests, and finally a hook or something interesting to end up with. And you really want to think about condensing your personal introduction to about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And it's a really good way, particularly if you're watching this and you don't have an interview lined up, for you to begin to start to get ready to pitch yourself and sell yourself in 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Question number 9, what is your greatest strength? Now, very often people get a little bit caught up about which strength should they choose, but ultimately if it's outlined in the job description, it doesn't really matter. Very often job descriptions are written in order of preference. So if you think the things that are higher up on the bullet points are going to be the skills that they're really looking for. The one thing that you just really want to make sure that you demonstrate is that you give very clear proof in terms of something that is quantifiable and provable. For example, if I said I'm really good at sales, this is my opinion. But if I said because I've sold £500,000 worth of real estate in the last 3 months, then maybe this becomes more impressive if we're talking about garages, for example. Probably not so impressive if we're talking about houses. But that is a quantifiable result or proof rather than just my opinion. And finally, question number 10, tell me about a recent technological innovation in banking. Now, we spoke previously about a new trend in banking, but I do tend to find technological innovations are a very popular question for most big companies in general, as they become much more technology focused and aware of the pace of change. Now, it could be something simple as, accepting payments on iPhone, could be something as complex as different forms of cryptocurrency. But whatever it is, again, if you're, reading The Economist, checking up on BBC News once a week, or just making sure perhaps that you're getting a newsletter from somebody who is interested in technology and banking so you don't need to do the research yourself, and choose something which you find generally interesting and simple to explain. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I wish you the very best of luck for your HSBC video interview. Please let us know how you get on, what other companies you'd like us to cover, or if there's anything you think that we should add to our videos in the future. Bye.